Welcome. My name is Chris with Tampa-Hillsborough County Public Library, and I'm joined by Chloe, who also works for the library. And I'm also joined by Mordecai Dixon, who is the Director of Gateway Services for the Crisis Center, and also Meredith Brown, who is Director of Clinical Services for Crisis Center. Welcome, everyone. How are you all?
Doing well. Thank you, Chris. How about you, Meredith and Mordecai?
Doing very well. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for having us tonight.
Yeah, we're very grateful for having you here as well. Thank you. This program is presented in collaboration with our Libraries Build Communities partnership with the University of South Florida School of Information's Responsive Librarianship Group. To learn more about this partnership and initiative, you can go to our landing page at hcplc.org/librariesbuildcommunities. And with all of our programs, we like to do a book shout out or sometimes a resource shout out. And tonight's book is called Are You Okay? It's a guide to caring for your mental health and how to know if you need help and where to find it by Katie Morton. This is available as an ebook through Libby by Overdrive. To search and find out about all of our ebook collections, you can go to hcplc.org/ebooks. All right, so now I'm going to hand screen control over to Meredith.
Okay, well, this evening we're going to give you an overview of the Crisis Center and just tell you a little bit about the community resource that we have here in Hillsborough County. Our mission at the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay is to ensure that no one in our community has to face crisis alone. And we do that in a variety of ways that Mordecai and I will speak to with the specific programs this evening. Mordecai, you want to take this slide?
Sure. Organizationally, in order to make sure that we can fulfill our mission and make sure that no one has to face a crisis alone, we have some strategic foundations, what we refer to as our pillars. The first is connecting the gateway, followed by effortless experience, normative culture, and financial sustainability. And so what those translate into in terms of practice, when we speak to connecting the gateway or having a normative culture, in a lot of ways they're the same. The Crisis Center has over 100,000 people just call its contact center alone. That's not in addition to the contacts made by our sexual assault services, our trans care teams, our Corbett Trauma Center. And so when you add those services up over the course of them over a year, our goal is to connect people to the larger network in their communities. We do that with a headset or a normative culture, fancy way of just saying the way we see the world. And the way we see the world at the Crisis Center is through a lens of trauma, paying attention to the things that lead to people's problems, which when they become escalated and or become beyond the capacities that they bring to the table, the resources they bring to the table, lead to crisis situations. We look at trauma because we all have had bad experiences in our lives and they leave an impression. Sometimes that impression impacts our ability to handle the way we live. And so our normative culture is not to ask, why did this person have those problems or why can't they handle those issues, but to ask what occurred that may lead to them being in the position that they're in right now. It's a different way of thinking about it. We create an effortless experience by not having them explain those traumas or those traumatic experiences multiple times. We're a very big center. We provide a lot of different services, and it's our goal and our aim to make sure that we don't make things worse by asking people to do things that make them uncomfortable repeatedly. We bear that heavy load. We do that through coordinated work activities, which Meredith and I will talk together about in a little bit. When you do the right thing by people, the money usually follows. And so in this organization, we receive monies to do this work from grant opportunities, some funding that comes from our county. So if you're taxpayers in this county, we thank you because you actually make a contribution to what we do, as well as development activities, fundraising opportunities that we receive through generous funders, corporate partners, and just doing good work. We sometimes take on populations that we don't even receive funding for, but when we do a good enough job by them, eventually somebody says, hey, would you like to do some more of that? A good example of that would be our veteran program. Meredith?
So Mordecai talked a little bit or touched on the trauma-informed care approach when he was speaking about the normative culture of the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay. And within that, we practice trauma-informed care. So not only with our clients, which may be our callers or clients for our counseling program, for example, but with each other in the workplace as well. And a big component of that you can see on this slide, but really looking to assuming that everyone comes to us, whether they're working with us as an employee or a client, and they have experienced some type of trauma in their lifetime. And so assuming that trauma has happened to you, we look at what has happened to you versus what is wrong with you. And we really focus on how to empower somebody and how to really engage and what does it mean to be aware that trauma is very prevalent and does not discriminate. Trauma untreated does not go away. And so what type of workplace do we want to have to be part of that normative culture that supports our employees so that they can best support the clients that are calling and asking for help or reaching out for services to address trauma?
The first service that you may hear about, you may see it, you may have heard the numbers. It's a 3-digit number, 211. The Crisis Center has been providing services like 211 services, which is a 3-digit information and referral line, since the early 70s in Hillsborough County. So a little piece of history for you there. We started as the hotline of Hillsborough. Concerned community citizens got together and wanted to address the issues that come out of unresolved traumas, as Meredith mentioned, mental health issues that may lead folks to believe that there's no other alternative but to suicide. And so that line would eventually grow into a number of other very relevant lines, 211 being one of them. And we today answer a significant number of phone lines. We have a contact center which mans 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 day a year services. So we never close. Our suicide prevention hotline is part of a national network. So we take calls from the National Suicide Prevention Line. We provide peer services through a veteran support line. This is also a statewide line. With collaborative 211s, we've actually built a service that started through a hang-up. Veterans would call the 211s and ask very pertinent questions that only other veterans could answer. And when they didn't get the answer that they wanted, some of them decided they didn't want to have the conversation. Through peer programming, what we do is we engage the person culturally through a lens that they fully understand. And so often, that person just needs to talk to someone else that speaks their language, understands their language, and wants to speak that language. And so we have individuals, veterans specifically, who have a number of experiences and engage the conversation, keep the conversation going, keep the person engaged so that they can discuss things that are intimate to them. In addition to that, we provide services to youth and young adults. Youth and young adults in Hillsborough County are under a lot of duress right now. They're experiencing a lot of stresses. Many of them are not in, they're undomiciled or they don't have residences of their own. In some cases, they may not be able to live in the residence of origin for family strain reasons, identity reasons, sexuality reasons, gender reasons. And so all of those culminate in a number of youth that are walking around sometimes without supports in our community. Our team identifies them, and when they want supports, we actually collaborate with other organizations in Hillsborough to provide them with services all through the life domains and basically toward building self-sufficiency. Again, a peer talking to somebody at this level is a lot more powerful than maybe someone my age who is significantly older than this client population. We do early childhood development screenings. We may meet parents who want to prepare their children for school, kindergarten primarily. and they don't know why their child may or may not be developmentally on par, or moreover, may not even understand what it means for their child to be developmentally on target. And so we identify those issues, we help them identify proper resources, and we also administer screenings. And our 211 doesn't just hand out phone numbers. We're so much more complex than that and more comprehensive than that. Likewise, we're not the traditional call center. Yeah, you see the gentleman sitting there, he's got phones and he's got headphones, he's got all those things that make it look like a call center, but we call it a contact center because we really want to make sure that we are, as Meredith said before, engaging that person, really talking about the story of what happened to you. It's not just a perfunctory question, it's something we sincerely want to find out. And in order to do that, we're not going to have a traditional call center paradigm. We don't script. We want to have genuine conversations with people, or what we call sitting with folks. And it doesn't matter what issues they bring to the table, which is why we enter statewide lines like the alcohol and drug line, a line where we're dealing with tough issues of sobriety, the lack of sobriety, and types of placement statewide. So your local 211 actually points you in the direction of a number of other services that you may not have ever thought. Meredith?
So I think if you remember nothing else from tonight's presentation, remember please the 3 digits of 211. That's the connection to help, hope, and healing in the community, and also will lead you to these other programs that I'm going to speak about within Corbett Trauma Center. So a lot of our referrals come to us from Gateway, but they don't have to, but that's the easiest way, so calling 211. We have a trauma counseling center where we are working with individuals of all ages who have experienced some type of trauma and working with them specifically on that to reduce those trauma symptoms. So we are not an inpatient facility. We are not an intensive outpatient facility. We provide in 4 different locations counseling, often 1 time a week, with a therapist that is specifically trained in evidence-based modalities for reduction of trauma symptoms. We have an office in Brandon, near the Costco and Kohl's area, and also in North Tampa at our main office where the call center or contact center is also located. And we also have a office suite in Mary Lee's house, which is in West Tampa, and a newer location in South Tampa in a bungalow, all providing that outpatient counseling to reduce trauma symptoms. We see about 70% of our clients have been impacted by some type of crime, whether that is sexual assault or burglary, arson, anything that fits into a crime category. That's about 70% of our clients. And the remaining percentage just kind of varies of severity. It could be, or not even severity, but different topics. So a lot of grief and loss can be very traumatic for people, so the death of a loved one, and we will see that individual very specifically focusing on that trauma. And then if there is supportive counseling or other needs identified in that process, we will refer out to a community partner that will maybe focus on the depression or anxiety or marital or family concerns as well. We have sexual assault services. So we are the only certified rape crisis center in Hillsborough County. So a term that many people are familiar with from news and things is a rape kit. So we do the rape kits here in Hillsborough County. We do them on site as a 24/7 facility where we have forensic nurse examiners complete the exam with the client, and we see people 13 and older for that exam. We also have sexual assault advocates. So that's the support person that is with that person who's coming in for the exam that can support that individual through any court hearings or anything like that. And one thing that's very, I think, special and unique and makes us a true supportive agency is that you can come for an exam within 120 hours of an assault. And if you are an adult, it is up to you whether or not you want to press charges or move forward with any legal action in that. We really want that voice and choice, but whatever you decide, we will support you through that. And also we have care coordination. So we have a couple different branches of care coordination. One that has been the most long-standing one is the suicide prevention care coordination. And we are working really significantly with individuals who have called Gateway and agree that they would like some extra support as they connect to resources and really work on following the safety plan so that they do not end up completing suicide. And our goal mainly is to keep them safe, but connect them to resources for that treatment, and so that they can feel some more fulfillment in life and no longer have suicidal thoughts. We also have advocacy care coordination, which is more of a generalized care coordination, specifically for our clients who have come to us through sexual assault services or outpatient counseling. As I mentioned, our outpatient counseling is specifically for trauma symptom reduction. So once trauma symptom reduction has happened, it is very possible that that individual may benefit from additional counseling that's outside of the trauma symptom reduction. And that advocacy care coordinator will help connect the client with amazing providers in the community. Our newest care coordination program is specific to human trafficking care coordinate, is specific to human trafficking. And it can be human sex trafficking, or it can be labor trafficking, and really trying to connect that individual to resources, safety planning, and just anything that individual may need as they are out of trafficking situations. As I mentioned, our trauma counseling is for any age. So our youngest client here has been 2 months. Now, we don't really necessarily focus on talking to that 2-month-old. However, we're really working with the caregiver to how that caregiver can support this individual who may have been exposed to domestic violence or having some attachment concerns due to caregivers' traumatic experiences themselves. And our oldest client could be 150, and we are all trained in evidence-based practices, which means that what we do works. It has been studied to be effective and appropriate for trauma symptom reduction. And trauma doesn't discriminate, as I mentioned earlier. Our amount of sexual assault exams varies from year to year. This last year, we had 281 forensic sexual assault exams. We did notice a decrease at the beginning of COVID-19. That seemed to be maybe because people were not going out as much, although oftentimes sexual assault can occur with someone we know, and that could pose a danger too. But we did see a decrease at the beginning of COVID-19 with the number of sexual assault exams that we were providing. And again, I mentioned with care coordination, the connection to resources and increasing support. One thing I did not mention with counseling, and before we go to the next slide, that I think is worth noting is prior to COVID-19, all of our counseling appointments were face-to-face in the same building. And within, I believe, 10 days of COVID-19, we went 100% to online counseling. And we noticed there was a decrease in cancellation and no-shows, and so more people were able to get the services that they needed. And now we're back to hybrid. So we have some people that have continued on teletherapy, but other people that have come back into the office. What questions does anybody have for us that Mordecai and I might be able to answer?
We've got a couple of questions here from the audience. There's a question about whether the Crisis Center provides support and assistance to individuals who do not speak English.
Hey, well, since most of those calls come through the lines before they make contact with anybody else in the department, most assuredly, we make sure that anyone who calls, if they want to speak in the language that they grew up with, and that makes them the most comfortable, we come to find out that when people are in high stress situations, they prefer to speak in a language that's more comfortable to them. And so, yes, we can translate and interpret in languages up to about 150 through what's called a language line. So what would happen in that case, they would speak to one of the intervention specialists who would respectfully ask, would they like to speak in their native language, and then identify that language, call our collaborative partner, and then a third party would join the phone call. They're kind of invisible. They're only there for the purpose of talking to us in our language and talking to the caller in theirs.
That's a great resource. We've got another question here. Are there any fees or insurance requirements for your referral services?
On the 211 side, we get that question a lot. The answer is none. There's no charge to call 211. We are here to help you. As I said before, we're using that three-legged prong stool. We're using grants, we're using some development activities within our own organization and some other funding that we pull together, and we make it work. It's not always easy, but when we get to other services, and Meredith can speak to some of those, we may point you in a direction on the 211 side that is going to provide what may be called a sliding fee scale, which means that the provider would give you some options for how much money you would pay based on what you actually could pay. In fact, in order to be enlisted in the 211, an organization has to prove that it's a low cost or no cost resource.
That's excellent. There's a question here about trauma services that are received at your different offices, and if there is an issue where a survivor cannot pay. Are there things like grants or that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our goal is to, if we can help somebody who's experienced a trauma, we want to be able to help them regardless of their ability to pay. And so we do accept insurances, and we'll ask about insurances. We will also ask about the ability to self-pay. And we will also look into if insurance is not an option, or maybe even co-pays or deductibles are really high, which make insurance not an option. We will ask about self-pay, but we also have the ability to utilize donations from the community and our community members that help support our services, as well as grant funding options. It's really important that we diversify our funding so that we can reserve grant funding for those who really need it. So that's why if you do connect with one of our client representatives for counseling purposes, they will inquire about insurances and self-pay and all of that information. But ultimately, if we can help you, we do not want to turn you away, and we will utilize grant funding, braided funding, anything that we can to make sure that your needs are met and that trauma symptoms can be reduced. The other thing that I will mention too, with sexual assault services and care coordination, there is no cost to the client. So all of sexual assault services for the exam fee and all of that are covered by government and grant funding, and same with our care coordination programs. So those services, you know, obviously there's consents and things like that signed, but there is no exchange of any money or insurance for those programs.
Very good. There's a question here. You have to be a resident of Hillsborough County to access your services, whether through 211 or otherwise?
On the 211 side, Chloe, the answer is no. You'd be surprised how many folks from other counties call 211. And their county doesn't work for some reason, doesn't meet a need. They may call our county because they're moving here. They may call here because they're literally in this county. So if you're driving from Hillsborough to Pinellas, when you're in the Hillsborough side and dial 211, you're likely to get us, although you live in another county.
And for our services, it might depend a little bit on whether or not other programs are available, or for sexual assault services where the assault happened. It doesn't mean that we would send you back to Tallahassee, for example, if you are located in Tampa. We could still do the exam, but we definitely we want continued collaboration with our other rape crisis centers, which do provide similar services oftentimes. So it might depend on a few factors, but again, we don't want to turn anyone away who we can help. So if we're in that conversation and it doesn't seem like there are other options closer to where that person may live, we will most likely be able to see them for the services within Corbett Trauma Center.
Excellent. Very good. Sounds like there are quite a few resources and many ways to acquire their use.
Definitely. Don't hesitate. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Oddly enough, many organizations close. We don't. We're open very consciously, very willfully to be an access point so that you can have voice, your own voice actually, and that you can resolve issues that you may have been a little skeptic about trying to address because you may have had some of the questions we resolved tonight there. If you have any other questions, feel free to call those 3 numbers Meredith told you about. Someone will definitely help. Okay, help, hope, and healing is what we're going for. Be patient with us because in COVID, our teams and our limited, sometimes they're really scattered and we want to really pay attention to everybody's calls. And so you'll get an option to allow us to call you back. That's your voice and choice saying, yes, it's okay for you to give me a call back. We want to make sure you can do that safely. So make sure you can, make sure that you can, really be around when that phone call comes back. We assure you, we will call you back.
Perfect. Moving forward with closing out the program, you can contact us at the Hillsborough County Public Library, either via phone, which is 813-273-3652, or through our website contact page, which is hcplc.org/contact. You can also see our schedule of events, whether in person once that starts unfolding, or our digital programs through hcplc.org/events. And you can learn more about the Crisis Center at crisiscenter.com or by calling 211.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Well, have a great evening. Thank you, everyone who joined us tonight. Chloe, Mordecai, and Meredith, thank you very much. This is very informative and very valuable resources and services that you provide. Hope you all have a nice evening.
Thank you for having me.